Breathe deep. Imagine your legs more limber in Duluth Trading Double Flex Denim. Envision euphorically squatting for that can of suds, bending for your toolbox in a state of bliss, lunging for your laser level on a whole new level. Relax and allow the flex to fill you with ability. Find your inner flex in Double Flex Denim only at Duluth Trading.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Power up fall projects with Ego at Lowe's. Every tool delivers power beyond belief. So whether it's leaves, limbs, or lawn cleanup, count on Ego to deliver the power, performance, and innovation you need. And now for a limited time, save up to $60 on select blowers, chainsaws, and pole saws. Shop Ego today at Lowe's. Offers valid through 10/1 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
We are at the end of the summer/winter test, depending on where you are in the world, for all of the URC nations. South Africa, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Italy, and more have played a series of games. And we, in this podcast, will be looking at what we have learned from those games. Who are the winners? Who are the losers? And where do we all go next? I am joined by most of the usual crew this week, and we're about to get into all of it, all of the in-depth analysis, and all of the shooting from the hip as normal. Let's start the show.
You're listening to United Rugby Rewind.
I am joined by Adam and Mohammed. Good evening, gents.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Let's get cracking. There's so much to talk about. There's been so much rugby. We are reviewing all of the series now that they are done. We're recording this on Sunday, the 20th of July, after all the tests. So we are going to start off with Mohammed, South Africa. 4 games, which is a lot in the summer/winter series, and 4 wins. How do you feel like it's gone?
I think it's gone quite well. I was looking forward to this series. We were playing sort of what one could describe as maybe lesser nations, and on top of it, Italy wasn't exactly putting out a consistent team either. I'm looking at sort of the makeup of the match 23 across all 4 games, noting that the Barbarians game doesn't actually qualify as a test cap for those of them, the players who made their debut and just the players who featured. Overall, I'm very happy. Yes, there's sort of been some inconsistencies in terms of the execution in terms of the game, but it feels like one has to remember that this is actually our start of our international season. So our international season starts now. We have a bit of a break, and then we go into Rugby Championship, which basically gets broken up into 2 segments of games. 2 games against Australia, in South Africa, 2 games in New Zealand. Much look forward to across the world for that. And then another bit of a break, and then a split of 1 game against Argentina in Argentina and 1 in South Africa. So, and then obviously quite a longer break, and then the end of the year. So for me, this is how you sort of like build up your international season. And yes, it's sort of a Lions season. So that means that if we're unlikely to invite over Ireland and or any in the teams whose players get selected for the Lions to come tour in South Africa. So I think it was very smart doing the whole Barbarians thing, adding a 4th game, considering our depth. Maybe it might have been sort of an issue if 2 South African teams had made it to the URC final, but only 1 did. Overall, happy with the amount of debutants. I'm sure some of the Welsh supporters must have been upset that Maris van der Merwe got selected, but that's how it works out, I guess.
Oh, well, we as Scarlets fans, we're all delighted for him. I should add, just interject at this moment, that we're not all South African fans. Me and Adam just happen to be wearing South African rugby tops. I'm wearing a Bulls top. Adam's wearing a Sharks top. Um, I'm the Welsh voice. Adam is the Irish voice. But we just happen to be collectors of rugby jerseys from around the world. We're just global fashion icons, Adam.
Yeah, very much so. I once accidentally emailed Nola Gold whilst on a night out, and I got a 50% discount offer. I said that I was a part of the United Rugby Championship. I haven't used it. Tried to use it on the weekend. They didn't have any kits left,
Oh
so
no, I have to wait for next season.
yeah. So I'm like, oh great. Hopefully they have a nice kit coming out.
Well, if you do want to find out about Nola Gold, you can check out the Wall Street Journal podcast, which is on the Global Gain Line YouTube channel. You can find it
Link. Yes.
somewhere you will find it, I'm sure. So let's get back to talking about South Africa. So, Mohammed, sit down and let's talk about South Africa. So you knocked up this list of all of the players that we've seen so far in the series, the 4 games. Hit me with who you think the standout players have been. Who's been the stars?
I like the fact that we have such a large player pool and they will mix together, but and yet we still won all 4 games. But for me, I'm probably biased in this respect. I've been a fan of Vincent Tutuka when he was at the Lions, and now he's doing really well at blindside and lock for the Sharks. So I was really happy with him. Asanate Tlabakanye, I'm happy that he's sort of developed in this role. Years ago, when he was still playing, sort of breaking through in the system, I was a bit concerned about his conditioning. I mean, there's more to being sort of an international prop than just being big. You got to have size, but it's also got to be good size, that type of thing. I mean, the idea of Kobus Visser, who I've seen play for the Sale Sharks, he's not the Bulls, by the way, at blindside, and sort of came through at the system at Western Province Stormers at lock. The fact that he started at 8 in the final game, that was very interesting against Georgia.
So this is something that Gatland did in the past with Wales, as he played Save Davis at number 8 for Wales, and he only played there for Wales. He'd never played there at club level, partially because locks are very thin on the ground in Wales. But then Fabien Galtier has also been playing Michael Guillard at number 8 for France, and he's a lock. So maybe this is a trend that's coming on, is locks at number 8.
Yeah, the thing that it reminded me of initially when I saw the team sheet, because I understood that Jasper Visser got a red card, but I wasn't sure if he was going to be suspended for the next game or not, depending on certain aspects. So I just breezed the team sheet, and I thought I just saw Visser. Then a day later, I realized it's not Jasper; it's his younger brother Kobus, and it reminded me of a Danny Rousseau type thing, because back in the day, when Jake White was the national team coach, there was this push from those of us who maybe weren't as clued into the nuance of balancing your loose forward trio. And many sort of pundits and journalists as well were saying, play Schalk Burger at 8. And Jake White, to his credit, was like, nope, it's going to be Danny Rousseau. And he was right. It's the less flashy option. And the thing is that Rassi had the license for a bunch of reasons to sort of experiment in these 4 games, and he actually used it to a very good extent. Other than that, anyone else stood out in particular? There was a large rotation, so I think a lot of guys really caught my eye. It was nice to see Jean-Luc Dupree back in the system. It's a bit of a concern that Jasper keeps getting suspended, not just for the national team, but at his time at the end at Leicester, in England, because he got suspended there and we needed him, and we couldn't actually use him. Good for Valero for getting 100 caps. Apelele Fase is still very clearly the first choice number 15 for me, but there is no first choice in the South African system. It's a rotation without losing any.
Yeah,
so I think the crux of it is that Rassi had to serve a lot of masters in terms of this 4 games, and he seems to have balanced the setup really well. Because I mean, he brought in a bunch of new guys. He got a bunch of people fresh. I'm looking here at Malcolm Marx starting all the first 3 games. That's interesting. So yeah, very happy with going into the 2 games against Australia with this type of form and rotation.
Well, you mention Mark starting. And to be honest, Bongi Mbambi hasn't looked that great in these games that he's played. So that brings it on to the question of who do you think has lost ground in the battle for game time for the Springboks?
Did anybody look bad? Bongi didn't look that great, but he's still part of the system. I think that also factors into the whole idea of we've got these two guys, we've got Bongi and Malcolm. Who's going to step up after them? The succession plan, we often talk about succession plan at fly half for many a team, but the succession plan at number 2 for South Africa, even the number 2, the hooker coming off the bench, it's quite a debate. I wouldn't think that anybody looked that bad per se. There was some up and down performances. I mean, the debate for of Evan Ross being in the team, not being in the team is quite a back and forth.
I think it's perfectly clear that Rassie doesn't like him.
Maybe not as a person, but more in terms of his. We have to clarify in terms of his strengths and weaknesses as a rugby player. So. Because the thing is that Rassie's dropped a lot of guys who people thought were young enough to go from the first World Cup success to the more recent World Cup success. The one that stands out the most is the scrum half from Herschel Jantjies, not to be confused with Herschel Gibbs, from VP Stormers. He was in the first World Cup successful season, and people just assume because of his age, he'll definitely be in the next one. But the thing is that Rassie's clearly trying to evolve the game plan. There's a lot of talk of evolving the game plan, not just to win games immediately, but it's like trying to serve multiple masters of like trying to win games immediately and understanding that you actually need to build a team, not just to win a World Cup, but to win a World Cup in Australia with those specific conditions. Because we're trying to go for the three-peat, and it's not going to be easy. Obviously, New Zealand are going to be favorites for that because it's basically in the same country as them. It's just over the pond. So, yeah, the Evan Ross thing is interesting for me. I just think his strengths and weaknesses don't fit with what Rassie is trying to do in terms of molding the game plan. Yes, there's a lot of speculative talk on social media of like his dad's a bit overbearing or stuff like that, but I've seen no reputable evidence to that. So it seems like conjecture to me because rugby is very popular in South Africa and people just make stuff up.
I've heard that it's true. Okay, on the subject of Herschel Jantjies, I put it to you that Grant Williams is by a long way South Africa's best scrum half, and he's proved it in the last couple of games.
Yeah, he looked really good. It sucks for us because he wasn't available for the Sharks for most of the season because he had the neck injury that flared up again. Him and I'm really impressed by Morne van der Berg. They look like the front runners. Having guys like Kobus, Reinach, and Faf still in the mix helps a lot. So
I don't think Faf has looked great for a while.
Sorry?
I don't think Faf has looked that good for a little while.
Yeah, but within the Rassie system, it's like you just got to be there and do what he needs you to do. It's also understandable that Jaden Hendricks is not in the mix, not because he tried to throw the Munster fly
These
off.
box look classic in that Georgian kit.
Yeah, it's just the sort of pinnacle of scrum half play is the Jameson Gibson Park, in my opinion, right? And the guys who play the closest to him are in the South African setup are now Morne van der Berg and Grant Williams. Not to say that Kobus Reinach and Faf won't be in the mix, and you also got to have a reasonable amount of depth because the reality is that injuries happen. So even Jaden Hendricks is sort of out of the system now, along with Lucanio. Neither of them had the greatest season for the Sharks in terms of form and in terms of fitness. Even they could be in the World Cup mix, depending on injuries and regaining of form and that type of thing. So yeah, I didn't actually do a tally of exactly how many players Rassie used over the course of this.
I shall tell you.
Okay.
Oh. Hang on, I need to click on the right thing. He used... Waiting for listeners, I'm doing a thing. He used 47, according to my count.
47 across four games.
Tests.
Yeah. The one thing I will say also is that it's really refreshing to see Damien Willemse back. That guy might not have been in the best of form, but yeah, he's vital to. In my opinion, he's like the best, if not. Yeah. of our backline
My,
players. So
my last hot take on South Africa, Manny Lebok played the best out of all the 10s.
yeah, he was pretty good. I like him. His kicking's improved as well. Yeah,
He
and his
shortened his run
passing's
up.
also good. Second.
He shortened his run up.
Yeah. And yeah, his passing is immaculate. So, I feel good for Manny Libok. I can't remember what school team or varsity cup team he was in. He was at the Bulls. He did okay. He went to the Sharks. He did okay. And he really blossomed at the Stormers. So for me, that seems to be, you got to find the right environment for you. So he's a guy who's caught a lot of slack. And some deserved, some undeserved. But yeah, I feel good for him. Yeah. He's going to Japan, but he'll still be in the Springboks setup.
Yeah. Adam, have you caught much of the Boks this summer? What have you made of them?
I've seen like bits and pieces. I've seen the Italy game when Italy sort of ran up 24 points, but I think you've covered it so well. Like any international team using, what was it, 47 players is something to really admire, especially over 4 games. Granted, one of them was against the Barbarians, and it was sort of like a run through of like I watched that one as well. That was sort of just an absolute toppling of it looked like a very thrown together Barbarians team as they normally are, but it doesn't look like the traditional Barbarian sense of they played a couple of games beforehand. They just played that game. So yeah, I think it's something to be admired for South Africa in terms of who they face as well, because I'm sure we're going to get on to Ireland at some point, but like the likes of having Georgia in your backyard is really good at promoting the game. Um, I think just to give those Georgian players a chance at having going into a big stadium as well, just makes it that much better. That's what these summer tours are really good. But yeah, as I said, like I think it's really admirable that South Africa can use 47 players in 4 games. It's wild to me. I wish Ireland could do the same.
And it's not like they're throwing in academy kids you've never heard of. Like
No,
every lineup you're looking and go, oh, he's good.
yeah. It's just like the depth that South Africa have built now. It's just like sort of like this factory of making really decent players. It's just like one of those international systems to be quite jealous of in that sense.
Mm. Just need to have a word on Italy because obviously they're a URC nation, so we do need to talk about them. No one expected them to beat the Boks in South Africa. They also sent a slightly weakened team. I think a good half dozen of their best players weren't even taken on the tour. I think it was Menoncello and I think it was basically Zebra plus Menoncello that they sent down. I thought the one player who stood out to me has made a big impact was Alessandro Garbisi off the bench in the first game. I thought he really brought some zip and really helped them score a couple of tries. Uh, Apart from that, there's not that much to talk about. Obviously, nilled in the second game by a 14-man South Africa. It's difficult to take many positives from that. I just wonder whether Italy are in the place where they want to be sending B teams to South Africa. I just don't know what that does for them,
It doesn't really do much, does it? It's sort of like that sense of they played Namibia beforehand. I didn't realize that.
Oh, they did, yes, put 70 on them.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I just looked it up there. They played Namibia and beat them 73-6. But like bringing a weakened team to South Africa when you probably have the crux of what your URC teams there, that you can send over, as you said, it was just sort of like Menoncello and Zebra. Is that just a way of giving the team more experience, getting them to travel down, harden them up a little bit? But a team getting nilled doesn't really do much in terms of morale, I can imagine, either for a team like that, like especially if they're a young team playing against one of the best teams in the world. So yeah, I find that very interesting.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? Before we move off South Africa, Mohammed, a word on the under-20s lifting the world title today as we record. Yesterday.
Oh, did I? I wasn't aware. Yeah, very good. What encourages me a lot is that we've been critical of the Lions' performance in the URC this season, but it really encouraging that so many of those players look really good, and so many of those players are actually in the Lions system, including the scrum half Hashim Pete. So basically,
So as a Sharks fan, you're excited about them coming to you in a year or two?
Yeah, pretty much. I do want the Lions to be competitive. So long as they don't beat us so much, they can beat the other teams. Yeah. So with the first time we've won this under 20. I mean, it's had many different names. It used to be in the junior world rugby champions, whatever. It's also very encouraging now that we have a junior rugby championship, much like the Northern Hemisphere teams have had the junior Six Nations for years now. I'm very happy that the starting fly off is obviously South African. So that's
That is a requirement to get into the team. Yes.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. From Sharks. I
I
misspoke.
see.
We got some Namibian guys in there, like Lorenzo Julius was born in Namibia, and he was a part of the team.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but his parents are from South Africa, so he was born in Namibia, he was born in Windhoek. So yeah,
Well, if he doesn't get capped, he can rock up for them in 27.
Yeah,
exactly. But he's talented for that. So I'm really happy about it. What's nice about watching, also they changed up the team. So it's the first time we've won it in 13 years. The last time we won it, I was there at Newlands Rugby Stadium watching it live with friends. That was kind of nice. Andre Pollard and etc. in that team. Andre Pollard, the most notable people who really went on to be hugely successful in that team was Andre Pollard, Steven Kitsoff, and Peter Steph Toy. Some other Oaks did okay, and some other Oaks just disappeared, but that's just the system. What's also notable is from last season, there was a shake-up. As we know, Rassie is basically head of rugby in South Africa, so they sort of felt that the performances, not just of last season, but the seasons prior as well, weren't necessarily up to scratch. So there was a redress of some of the coaching structures. Some of the coaches maybe moved on. Some of the coaches moved to different systems and that type of thing. So people weren't necessarily thrown away. Nobody was scapegoated.
Helping them out, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Ackerman came in. The guy who's now the head of the junior Springboks used to also coach in Australia, Melbourne Rebels, I remember. He was also the varsity cup coach for UCT Ikes at some point, so that's good. So what I liked about the shakeup of the South African rugby system after the junior Springboks didn't do so well in this tournament exactly a year ago wasn't that anybody was scapegoated. They addressed the system as opposed to said this individual is responsible, and everybody was sort of on board, and it's worked out. But the reality also is that these types of tournaments maybe certain factors come into it, but it's also like the people who come through the system and maximizing it. So yeah, glad to have won it after 13 years.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. South Africa have been underperforming massively in the under-20s World Cup for a while now, so it's kind of back where you should be really. But speaking, the last thing on South African rugby is, how are you getting on looking for hosts of your South African rugby podcast?
Well, we're just short a Lions supporter, so if anybody's watching this and they support the Lions, please give us a shout on the email. It should be in the description below. And yeah, we've got a Bulls supporter in the team. We've got a Storm supporter. I'm obviously the Shark supporter, so we're just short the Lions, but we are happy to have backups as well so that we can sort of fill out the roster in case people have sort of other commitments. Like Kaylin said on the Irish podcast, which I did enjoy, the Interpro podcast, which you'll see on this website, on this YouTube page. As Kaylin said of Adam, he's the only person on that panel who has a social life. So,
okay, so as you mentioned there, you will be able to find that South African podcast once it is up and running. So if you want to be a host on it, you need to get in touch with us and let us know. You can find that on the Global Game Line, which is where you're watching this now. Well done. So this is the new offshoot of what was Rap, or Rap still is, but Rap will now moving forward be just the Welsh stuff, and all of the non-Welsh stuff is being moved to the Global Game Line. So as you can see, it's already up and running. We're going to have this URC podcast. We're going to have an Irish podcast, which is already up and running with Adam being one of the hosts, and that Kaylon, formerly of this parish, hosting that. Then, like we said, there'll be a South African one. There is already an American one, which is fantastic. It's the only American rugby podcast on YouTube, called the Mall Street Journal. And as you can see, it's doing pretty well in terms of views. And that's got MLR, Men's Eagles, Women's Eagles, WER, everything. And as we go into the Women's World Cup later this year, that's definitely a pod you want to be on top of. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Global Game Line. This channel is going places, I promise you, and we would love if you were along for the ride too. Right then, Adam, let's do Ireland talk, fresh from your Ireland podcast. What's it called again? The Interpro Show?
Interpro Show, yes.
Are you still looking for a Leinster presenter?
We are, yeah. Kaelin's trying to, like, because he's the Connacht he's the Connacht guy because he's from Connacht, guys. Just to let everyone know, it's him and Caelan Doris, the ones that you never know are from Connacht. They're from Connacht. um, he's trying to like pass me on to be the Leinster one because my mum's from Dublin. So, but I was just a bit like, I'll
So
leave.
come on, Leinster people, you're in the comments every week, so why not come on the screen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can see how nice we are anyway, because we didn't do any sort of type of hit piece on Leinster last week. We were like full of praise, semi praise, I'd say, for those lads. But yeah, the Ireland tour was interesting. I would have wanted it to be a bit longer. I think we were rumored to play Romania as well, but I think they've had some issues.
They're over in South America at the moment, so there's
Yeah,
been a bit of a cock up on the catering front on that thing.
it must have been because I think when it first sort of got talked about us playing Portugal and Georgia, that Romania was also one of those ones that were going to come up, and also Spain, which would have been interesting as well. But yeah, we had an interesting tour. It's one of those where we tried out some of the new lads. We got some new caps in. Um, we also had a center partnership against Georgia of like Jamie Osborne and Stuart McCloskey, and Jacob Stockdale also in the back line. So when you like look at the back line for like the Irish like team against Georgia, it was Casey Prendergast, Stockdale McCloskey, Jamie Osborne, O'Brien, Tommy O'Brien, and Jimmy O'Brien. So it was one of those where it wasn't necessarily like our C team. It wasn't like
They're a decent team,
it was
especially the one against Georgia. I looked at and thought that's all right.
It's a very decent team, and like the likes of like O'Brien, who's like well what was it, Tommy O'Brien. I was like reminded by Kaelan that he's only about 6 months younger than Jacob Stockdale. So I thought he was
Really?
yeah, he's 27. Yeah, he's 6 months older. He's 6 months younger than Jacob Stockdale. So like he sort of had that weird breakthrough mid career breakthrough that.
This mascot is very nearly as tall as Craig Casey.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. That's with Craig Casey. He sometimes is a mascot for the Ireland team sometimes. But yeah, it was a good way of like trying out fresh sort of formations, and especially in that front pack. We had a very nice Nick Timoney, Gavin Coombs, Ryan Baird back row against Georgia, which worked a treat. You had Nick Timoney and Gavin Coombs that are sort of like those bashful, really quick flankers that you'd be worried that they were going to be a bit standoffish and who was going to try and lead on, but they just did their thing and they played against that Georgian team very well. I think I said in this podcast before the summer tour that I wanted to see Prendergast against a Georgian pack, and he did very well. I think that it was one of those that this is, of course, going to be sort of known as the Prendergast versus Crawley. Crawley, of course, played against um, uh, Portugal, and we got our record-breaking scoreline there, but we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I think it's been a very good one to cap players and also get them in the system, get them around. You've got boys like Clarkson, who we're sort of looking at to be the next sort of tight head in the future as well. Jack Boyle and Gus McCarthy. You've had Gus McCarthy, who's Leinster's like third, fourth choice hooker in because of course Gallagher and Shane
Oh,
are.
I thought he was good in the autumn, to be fair.
He's very solid. He's a very solid hooker, but it was also really good as an Ulster fan to see Tom Stewart being there as well. And hopefully he gets like an injury-free season where he gets a run at it. But yeah, I found it like a very interesting tour. Certainly the Portuguese game when we beat them 106 to 7.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's talk about that now because this is on the screen now. Nil 54 is the halftime score. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Can Ireland realistically take anything from this game?
Um, Well, we got a lot of new boys in. We've got a lot of like new caps. It was sort of a way to get I like O'Connell, like Alex Candallen, Hugh Gavin, and Shane Bolton all have Ireland caps now. I was really impressed by Hugh Gavin as well. The con at 13, I think he was in the seven setup potentially. But yeah, I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to correct me. But Hugh Gavin was really good, and I think that also is the benefit of having Stuart McCluskey like a wise head next year. Stuart McCluskey was the oldest player in the squad at the age of 30, so you would think like, oh, it must have been such a like a new look team, but like as an Irish rugby fan, I look at the Ireland team to play that played against Portugal. You had Craig Casey, Jack Crowley, Shane Bolton, who like you would know if you were in the provincial setup, because he's a very good URC player, and he could kick on. Stuart McCluskey, Hugh Gavin, and then both of the O'Briens again. That's not a weak team. That's not a weak team at all. You had Tom Ahern as well. Um, and Bird, and I also mentioned about Clondallen. Um, and the front three stayed the same. It's one of those. Is it a way of promoting the game in a place that doesn't necessarily have a traditional game, like a traditional rugby team in it? Yes. However, is it a way of also, on the other hand, is it a way of turning people off Portuguese rugby because they're seeing this Ireland team absolutely thrash them? Not necessarily because it's full of the players that they would know, because the players that they would know are playing for the Lions. Like all of our like big name players are playing for the Lions, whereas this Ireland team is probably going to be an Ireland team that we're going to see against Japan in November. Do you know what I mean? Like a much better opposition. But yeah, it was interesting. I think as soon as we sort of hit 80 points, they were going for that 100 score line. It's our highest points total since 2000 against it was USA, and it was like 83-3. So, is it a beneficial test tour to do? Another game would have been a bit better for us. Was it beneficial in the long run? I'd say Paul O'Connell getting head coach time is a very beneficial thing. Having some of those coaches in and around the international setup, and also having the likes of like Hugh Gavin make an impression against a lower team. I think O'Connell mentioned about how Portugal had 14 of their players from the World Cup go. Like that most of them have went from that squad. So it was a relatively new look Portuguese squad, according to him as well. This is a Portuguese squad as well that faced the Lions in a training behind the closed doors training setup as well. So I think the home nations are certainly going to get invested in Portugal. I think this is only the start of teams going to Portugal, which I quite enjoy. I think it's our first professional game against Portugal, and everybody kind of has to start somewhere. Um, at least I hope this is not like the end of like that sort of Portugal phase. Do you know what I mean? Because we all enjoyed watching them in the 2023 World Cup. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting one. It was really interesting just to see the different lineups that we could have made. But you had the likes of Craig Casey and Jack Crowley, the starting 9 and 10 for Munster, playing against the team that don't have a professional team. Like some of them don't have professional teams. Some of them play in the Pro D2, which isn't as good as the URC because we all know it's the best league.
Yeah. So who from this? Because this is the worry now is that when the Lions come back, they'll just default back to those players then again, and like lads like Cormac Isachuku won't get a look in. Whereas, in the build up to this season, everyone in Ireland has been saying we need to start seeing these other guys. So that's got to be the kind of pressure that people have got to put on the management now of no, we've seen these guys now, they did good, albeit against low opposition. It's time to give them an opportunity.
Yeah. So I think like if you're watching the Lions right now, you know that Andy Farrell hates changing teams. He absolutely despises it. I don't think like he has a tried and tested system, and he'll start you until you're injured. Like it's a very annoying thing as an Ireland fan because the likes of Cormac Achukwu, Ahern, I would even say like the likes of Craig Casey is going to find it very difficult to get back in the Ireland squad as well. Ben Murphy, who also was another one that got capped, he also is a talent that's rising through the ranks at scrum half. And then of course Gibson Park's going to come back, and then you're going to have that whole thing again of Andy Farrell picking Gibson Park, Gibson Park, Gibson Park. It'd be Italy, he picks Gibson Park again. Casey's going to get sort of shuffled in the background, and then we're going to lose Ben Murphy altogether in terms of that setup. It's very frustrating, but I think Andy Farrell just needs to sort of chill about cohesion for a second and actually think about the future. Because even as I said, Tommy O'Brien's 27, he's 6 months younger than Jacob Stockdale. You still have players. I think Bolton is younger than him. Do you know what I mean? There's still players in that setup, like Zach Ward, for example, as well, is younger than him. There's loads of players that need to have that step up. And for the Japanese game in November, which is going to be the pinch point to get into the likes of the squads against in the Six Nations squad, the likes of Cormac Izuchuku, Ahern, Candelen, I would even argue Jimmy O'Brien, who I'd say any other phase of Irish rugby, he'd be the starting 15 for Ireland. It's just the fact that Hugo Keenan and Osborne are there to sort of sweep the fullback debate up. Yeah, I find it very interesting. I think it's one of those that it shows that Farrell needs to be more relaxed on giving players a go, because we're going to get that same stale rugby that we saw. I'm sure we're going to mention the Lions at some point, but it's just that same setup. And we also played with a bit of attacking freedom as well. But I don't know if that's because we're playing against essentially some of them semi-professional, semi-pro rugby players, because they looked knackered from the 33rd minute onwards, and then we brought on Cormac Izuchuku, and then he was bashing through boys, and then we brought on Frawley, who this time last year was getting a drop goal against South Africa to win the summer test. So it's that weird like limbo of the Irish squad at the minute. If you were to listen to the Interpro show, Caelan did a depth chart.
Yeah.
Depth chart for Ireland, and it was a very interesting one to look at, considering that I think I mentioned on that podcast that I think everyone in World Rugby is struggling to find a loose head prop. I'm in that sense that there's loads of loose head props that are, well, I think bar South Africa, of course, but like in like the sense of the British and Irish Lions, you have the likes of like Schumann, who is came in, and then all of a sudden you got a couple of props gone, and we're sending up the likes of like Roy Sutherland, who was a very good player back in 2021 when he was a Lion. But now it's a bit confusing. I think at the minute we need to like pile up on loose head props. But that's why it's good seeing the likes of Boyle play 2 games for Ireland as well, because he is going to be in that starting berth at some point as well.
Look, the question of succession is very interesting, because since the last World Cup, I would have thought that Andy Farrell would sort of slowly bleed in people. And it's the whole idea of what we spoke about earlier of, can you do 2 things or multiple things at the same time? Can you both keep winning to a certain degree? You can't win every game. No team can do that. And can you sort of slowly bleed in people to then refresh the squad? I mean, the one thing I did agree with, of many things probably, I'm somewhat critical of Heineke Meyer, but the one thing I did agree with what he said once that I read, sort of like the Burger, where he says was sort of like, if you're going to bring a new kid in, you kind of want to surround them by, you give them the best chance of success. You want to surround them by sort of senior players so that they can have that environment where they don't feel that they have to sort of rescue the team, that type of thing. But if I look at since the World Cup, and then I look at the next 4 games of the Island season, because your season runs more like a year, whereas ours is sort of pretty much a year, but just starts later. You've got New Zealand on the 1st of November, then Japan on the 8th of November. A week later, you got Australia, and then South Africa. Okay. Exactly how you're going to sort of blood these guys in, I haven't heard you guys mention Kian Prendergast. I've been watching him. I don't know what chance he has of being in the team once there's more senior guys come through. But the reality is that if his idea was this, I'm going to play the senior guys up until the Lions tour, and then I'm going to start to really get down with succession. because maybe he was sort of loyal to the guys that were in the system and he wanted to give them the best chance of being Lions as opposed to start the succession slowly but gradually after the World Cup. Then maybe that was the idea. If that gives him enough time, we don't know. There's different opinions on when you should actually start building for another World Cup because I love winning URC, Curry Cup, that type of thing. But the whole idea in rugby is always like the biggest bragging rights is did you win the World Cup or not? And if you're an international manager, coach, test level, you're probably cool with winning test series. You're probably cool with winning rugby championships or Six Nations. But if you can just get one World Cup and then you're golden. So we'll see what happens. But I am interested to hear what you guys because you didn't mention Ken Prendergast. Also, I did watch the Interpro show and I really enjoyed it. And we will be recording the South African podcast with myself and a Storm supporter and a Bull supporter. Even though we don't have a Lion supporter, we'll be recording that on Wednesday evening. The first one, so it'll be on this channel. Please check it out. And then, we'll probably be on the channel Wednesday evening. So yeah.
Very nice.
Cian Prendergast then, Adam.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So Cian Prendergast, I think he got injured. From what I remembered. Oh no, he missed the game through illness against Georgia. That's what it was. He missed the game through illness against Georgia, and then he played against Portugal. But it's one of those where Cian Prendergast is at the time, like when you think about, he's going to be a sort of like a Jack Conan of this sort of era. He's probably deserves more caps than he is going to get. But then we have the likes of Caelan Doris, and there's like loads of boys coming through that system that are going to be like big number eights through that. But Cian Prendergast, it's an interesting one. Much like his like if he was playing like his brother in Leinster, he would have a lot more talk on him. However, he's playing for Connacht, and I think Stuart Lancaster is going to show a lot of good in Cian Prendergast. But yeah, I think as you said, Mohammed, it's one of those like when do you start bleeding in new players against big teams? And I think that Australia game is going to be that time that we need to bleed. Like that's what we did with Prendergast this November. We started him against Australia. A couple of years ago, we started Gary Ringrose at 13. And that was like when he was relatively new. We started him against Australia. It's that Australia game is when we need to start bleeding those players. That Japanese game beforehand is going to be those players that are trying to push to that Australia game. I think that's what we need to sort of see that November as, because we're 2 years away from a World Cup, and you have, sort of like the bones of a team. Like we've got a very solid team there, but we also got caught out massively in the Six Nations just by how sort of, I don't know, how predictable the play gets sometimes with Andy Farrell. Which I'm going to be interested to see about next week and how Joe Schmidt combats that, because Joe Schmidt actually, on him, he was probably the best player to bring in new players in that Ireland setup, because when you think about over the years, he was the one that was sort of guiding the players through. He had the likes of O'Connell gone, like O'Connell retire, O'Driscoll retire, and he brought players through. And they thrived in international setups because, as you said, Mohammed, he started like a couple of new boys and then just filled the team out with just like people that will suit the system essentially. But yeah, I find it very interesting. We didn't use as many players like at all really. Like we had like Nathan Doak in that squad, and he didn't get into any of the squad, any of the teams, which I find really interesting. But that's possibly because Craig Casey was captain, and he was captain for the tour, and that means he's guaranteed to be playing more, which is fair enough. But yeah, and the front three as well didn't change at all. So we clearly have some type of thought process going through with this squad. It's just about who we're going to pick for the Japanese game, and then who's going to kick on from that and play in the Australia game. And then that's when we're going to figure out what's going to be our Six Nations squad. I think we're going to pull out the big guns for South Africa and New Zealand, essentially. So yeah, that's how I think it's going to go.
Yeah, completely agree. Okay, moving on now to Scotland, the penultimate URC nation that we're going to talk about today. So Scotland, as far as I'm aware, apologies that Policeman Ben isn't here. He's too busy catching criminals and putting them behind bars to be with us this evening. But don't worry, he's not dead. He will be back. So Scotland, I believe, played three tests this summer. They played against the Maori All Blacks, which if you haven't watched it already and you are able to watch it, definitely check it out. Cracking game. I really enjoyed it. They then played against Fiji, which we'll come back to in a moment, and they played against Samoa on Friday morning, which I always enjoy watching Samoa. I think Samoa are the biggest what if in rugby in terms of if they didn't have so many off the pitch issues, I think they could be a top 10 ranked nation. But they put Samoa to the sword pretty handily. It was quite funny that they Scotland kept getting scrum advantages and then not taking them and just playing and trying and making like 50-meter breaks. If they'd have like actually taken their scrum dominance, they probably would have won by even more than what they actually won by. Did anybody catch any of this game?
No, they all were in sort of like odd times in the morning, wasn't it? Like a Friday morning. I'd be getting ready for like I'd be getting ready for work at that time.
Oh yeah, because you got to be in a place. Us working from home people watched
Yeah.
it with a cup of tea and enjoyed ourselves very much.
Oh, the dream.
So yeah, I was impressed. Obviously, Scotland missing a lot of stars, and you would say that Scotland's depth being what it is, they were missing. Their misses were a bigger impact. Kind of Tom Jordan was kind of the best player that was still around. While it's in my head, I'll mention it. Scotland's two scrum halves, Wee Georgie Horn and Jamie Doby. I love these two players. They're two of my favourite players in the whole URC. It's mad that they're both for Glasgow. I wouldn't mind seeing Jamie Doby move over to Edinburgh. I love George Horn. I call him uh, Antoine Duhorn. He just plays so well. He's such a live wire. I love watching him so much. But Jamie Doby, this guy, for me, has got a big future. I'd like to see him getting more opportunities for Scotland. He can play wing. He can play wing, and it was fun when Horn came on and Doby moved to wing because then they were kind of dovetailing. They would take it in turns doing rucks and things. That was fun. But Jamie Doby's got a wicked pass on him. He's such a threat ball in hand. I'd love to see him. If Scotland ever wanted to go to a 7-1 split, he'd be the one. And I just love watching him. Mohammed, didn't you have a question about the Fiji game?
Yeah, I didn't get to watch the game. I looked at the squads, and because I don't really follow Super Rugby anymore, for personal reasons, um, uh, I looked at the Scotland squad and I thought, that's pretty decent. I mean, it's not the best of they can. They've got injuries. They've got guys in the Lions squad, that type of thing. Kyle Rose there. Obviously, we're big fans of Tom Jordan there. My personal favorite from Kimberley, Carl Steyn is there. Fergus Burke from Saracens. I've seen some good stuff from him. I'm also a big fan of Jamie Doby. He's Scotland's version of Grant Williams. Jamie Ritchie's there. So you follow Super Rugby much closer than I'm able to. Was it a case of Scotland not showing up, or was it just a case of me not knowing the quality of this Fiji team?
So Fiji are a legitimately good team these days. They're ranked in the top 10 in the world, and I think they deserve that. They've beaten Australia, Wales, and now Scotland in the space of 2 years. They've dominated the Pacific Nations Cup in its current incarnation, winning it easily. I just think that that's a true reflection of Fiji, to be honest. Now, of course, it helps that Scotland were missing a lot of top players, and it would have been closer. But honestly, I think the scoreline flatters Scotland. I think it was a battering from Fiji, and they bombed loads of tries in this game. It was great to see them get a home test, which they don't get many of. They ran Australia very close the week before in their kind of warm-up game for the Lions. And you got guys like, oh my God, the Fiji backline that they played for that game against Scotland. If you follow the top 14, because most of those players are top 14 players. So you got Joshua Tuisova with Sueli Mangala in the centres. That's an upgrade on a lot of top teams centre partnerships. You're talking outside the top 3 or 4. Like I think France would very happily take those two centres off Fiji, to be honest. And then you got Waningolo on the wing, who is unplayable at the moment. Like you don't tackle him. He either runs past you or runs into you on purpose. You don't tackle him. Like he was absolutely phenomenal. I was very impressed in the first game, in the Australia game, by Rayasi. Was playing for Vaughan, has now been signed by UBB. He was very good. He wasn't that great in the Scotland game. He got subbed for Armstrong Wavula, who's another player that I love. But yeah, I just think that that's a fair reflection of Fiji, to be honest. And I think that they are you would expect them to beat a weakened Scotland team at home. And to be honest, it'll be interesting to see when this Nations Cup thing starts, if teams have to go to Fiji more often to play them, to see what their record would turn out to be there because I think Fiji are a legitimate top 10 team. I think Adam, their performance against you guys in November, I don't think that was representative of the modern Fiji.
Not at all. I think I would love Ireland to do a Pacific Island tour. We were supposed to, and then COVID happened. We were supposed to go during that Lions year. And then COVID happened, and then we didn't, and that just sort of folded itself up. Like I would rather have had a Pacific Island type tour or even a couple of test games against Argentina than the two games that we had. Not to say that that sort of ruins my point of promoting the game in other
A
space.
South American tour would have been cool as well. Uruguay, Chile.
Yeah, that's tour, isn't Scotland did last year. USA, Canada, Uruguay. Did they play Chile as well? Or
Yes, they did. Yes.
yeah, Chile, and then didn't they play an Argentinian team as well? So like that would have been like a really good way to promote the game as well. Whereas I think this Ireland tour was sort of like necessarily rushed a little bit. I would have rather played against a team like that Fijian team against the team that we played against with the team we played against Georgia with. That would have been an amazing game because of the dynamics of the two squads would have faced well. And also seeing the likes of Crawley and Prendergast versus the ones that like a team like that, which are going to be more competitive, would have benefited that sort of debate around the two at the minute, which I'm not going to put my 2 pence in just yet because I'm sure we're going to be talking about that a lot over the next season. But yeah, that sort of the Scotland doing the Maori All Blacks as well. That's also beneficial as well. That's a massive win for them. Yeah, it's just such a cool setup, like a cool tour to do. Like I don't I think more teams should do it. I think Wales should do it.
Absolutely. My friend and colleague Harley Worthy is very much of that opinion that the tours that Scotland have been doing, that America's tour, which you mentioned, which I think is a great concept, and Pacific Island tours, that's what Wales should be doing. Like we're probably going to tour New Zealand again before too long. I mean, I don't want to think about it, but that's what we should be doing instead of endlessly playing Australia. We should be doing these kind of emerging nations tours because that's our level, let's be honest. So yes, I'm very envious of these tours. So okay, let's talk about Wales now then. So I'm the Welsh Roy. So somebody asked me a question about the senior men's Wales team, just the international team. I don't want to talk regions this evening.
Oh, okay. God. Um, how so from the first game to the second game, of course, one of them being a loss and one of them being a win. What was the main sort of takeaway from those two that you thought was the difference maker in actually winning the game?
That's a great question. What was the difference maker? I think in the first game was weird. What normally happens in Japan games is they have loads of ball, they do loads of like fancy plays and things, and they absolutely knacker themselves after 20 minutes. But as that game kind of worked out, Wales dominated possession in the first half, and kind of Japan didn't have a chance to knacker themselves. Whereas the game was played in something like 40-degree heat, God knows what percentage humidity. And it wasn't just in the heat, like it was in the blazing sun. Like I think the reason that Talupe Faletau had to come off, having been Wales's best player, and the reason he didn't play the week after was because he suffered from the sun. Like it had an actual effect on his fitness and availability, which is really concerning. But so there was that factor. But I think, a lot of people got really big brained after the first Wales loss to Japan and like all got galaxy brain on the psychology of the team and things. That second half performance from Wales was the worst line out performance I've ever seen from any team in my life. It was diabolical. We were beaten up in the air, the race up in the air to the ball. Warner Dearns got that. They read our line out so easily, and this has been a problem for Wales's line out for ages, is that our lineouts are so easy to read, so easy to steal. We're slow in the air. This Ben Carter was our lineout caller, and he went off in the first 30 seconds, knocked clean out. And they brought on James Ratty. And that James Ratty, Teddy Williams partnership at lineout time just did not work at all. It was a disaster. They didn't know what they were doing. to be frank. Wales had opportunities in Japan's half in that first game where they'd kicked to the corner and had a line out and then just screwed up the line out. And it happened a good 4 times. So that's I without, I don't think that there's much more analysis needed on that first game other than the line out was a catastrophe. The second game was better. They brought in Tame Plumtree into the 23. For me, Tame Plumtree is Wales's best loose forward at line out time. But generally, he had a huge impact on the game when he came on. He had 4 or 5 very key interventions. So this is, I know I'm a biased Scarlets fan, but I would always have Tame Plumtree in the Wales 23. I think he deserves to be there. I think he's got capabilities that no other players do. That's my opinion. The set piece is still a worry. The line out was better, but not fixed. And the scrum, we were giving up scrum penalties to Japan. I don't want to lean into like stereotypes and stuff, but when you think scrums, you don't think Japan. And I think Japan are going to struggle at scrum time in other games. So for Archie Griffin to be getting munched by a rookie Japanese front row is really worrying. It's really worrying. So Wales won that second game. Japan, look, let's not beat around the bush. Despite what some people might have you believe, Japan aren't very good. They're not very good at all. And Eddie Jones, what he's chosen to do with them, I don't see why he's doing what he's doing. I don't think it's necessary at all. And if rumors are to be believed, the players don't really like it either. So we're not fixed. Like we avoided losing 19 in a row, but it's going to be very tough come the autumn again. And like you said, Adam, I'd much rather us tour the Americas and string a few wins together and get some confidence into it. But it was nice to win, and it was nice to see some players playing well. Josh McLeod, for example, doing well on the international level, but
like Wales have got a tough November with Argentina, Japan, New Zealand, and South Africa. Would you want one necessarily win there? Like could you see two with that Argentina game potentially? But the way they played against the Lions at the start of this summer, they look like they're going to have an interesting rugby championship, let's just say for their sake, because they've sort of hit the ground running in that sense.
yeah, I think you never know against Argentina. They they're very easy to drag down a level if they're playing against a not very good team. The Argentina kind of do better against better teams.
Yeah.
And they get dragged down a level once they play against someone bad. So anything can happen against Argentina. I think we should be expecting to beat Japan. We just beat them at their place. We should expect to beat them at home. The All Blacks could put 100 on us. I'm not. It maybe not. Maybe I'm being over dramatic there, but I'm making a point. I would expect 70 points for the All Blacks in that game. And the thing is that if we don't concede 70 or 80, some people will be saying, "Oh, that's not so bad," but that's kind of not the point.
Do you sort of want?
What's the situation with the coach, the head coach?
Yeah, I still don't have one. Still don't know who's going to be.
So the current guy is just interim for now. How
Yeah.
do you see it playing out? Do you think they'll actually assign a permanent head coach at some point?
At some point, I'll be alarmed if they don't. But
Yeah.
it's
Do they have enough money to sign like a Rog? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know the way that he sort of links?
well, Abby Tierney said when they got rid of Gatland, they said we have money to buy anybody out who we want, and apparently not.
Yeah.
It seems
But-
like every aspect of Welsh rugby is in flux, which is completely weird for me because not too long ago you guys were really, really good. It's almost like we spoke multiple times now on this podcast about succession. Did you guys just get succession on the field incredibly wrong?
I can't explain why it's happened the way it has. There's the saying about the end comes slowly and then suddenly.
Mhm.
But I can't explain it. And, without wishing to be really horrible, which there's enough of that in Welsh rugby, but, they send like the training pictures and they like send pictures of the boys like stood around in huddles.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm looking at some of those pictures and I'm thinking, how did we go from George North and Jonathan Davis and Liam Williams to this in like a year? Like it's bizarre, and I can't. And that was the thing after the first Japan game. Other than the line out, I was like, I can't explain why it's gone this badly this quick. And I don't know, and people are slagging off the players left, right, and centre, which I guess I've done a little bit, so I'm sorry, but I don't buy into the fact that there's no talent there. I can't
Like,
explain it. That's the thing now at this point is I
Hmm.
just can't explain it.
I
So
wouldn't feel so bad about it because for like the last decade and a half that I've been a South African rugby supporter, we've had some dark periods as well. And that's me coming on this podcast who's not wearing a South African shirt. And you're wearing a Bulls and you're wearing a Shark shirt, and I'm wearing a Nine Inch Nails hoodie. But we've been through some dark times, and we've come out on the other side. Some of the key aspects to that is we do have a head coach now who's like obsessive about rugby. So he's also very good.
I think almost like you have to look at the Welsh rugby system, and there is some green shoots there, and I mean properly green shoots. You've got Jack Morgan, and you've also got like Blair Murray, who are like the type that will sort of hopefully kick on that next step in Welsh rugby, but also in a way you will have that question of which I'm sure, well, there was that emergency podcast that Rap did about it, but like, is the English Premiership necessarily going to be your savior in that sense? The fact that you see how teams like London Irish have coped, Wasps have coped, Worcester Warriors. You have those teams that have just sort of went into oblivion. When you look at a team, when you look at the URC, at least you think that the Scarlets and the Ospreys and the Cardiff Blue and Cardiff, I nearly call them the Cardiff Blues. They're not Blues anymore. Not the Blues anymore. But you have those teams that are at least competitive in a sense that the Scarlets won the Pro 14 within 10 years. You had the Cardiff Blues, the Cardiff Blues at the time, around 2010 odd, like winning Challenge Cups. You had the Ospreys winning the league as well within the 2010s. There's something that happened between there and then, which
it,
I would probably argue is bringing back Gatland, which was the sort of that start of, like, as an outsider looking in, it was probably bringing back Gatland, and that was a sort of the start of this sort of weird period where you just lost 18 games in a row.
I was thinking about it today, and I was like, it's only really post-COVID that it's gone wrong. We won the Six Nations in 2021,
Damn.
and the Scarlets, the COVID runnings of what was then the Pro 14 were really curtailed. If we had the playoff format that was initially in the Pro 14 before COVID cut all the seasons short, the Scarlets would have made the playoffs in both seasons. So it's wrong to say this is the thing that really the winds a lot of things wind me up about Welsh rugby. One of maybe the top 10 things that winds me up is people saying it never worked, and that's just a lie. It did work, and it's stopped working, and it's only relatively recently that it's properly fallen apart. So I don't know. That's kind of as much as I can say. It's nice to get a win, and it would be nice to get another one in the autumn, but I still don't. I think Wales are ranked outside the top 10 in the world correctly, to be honest. Okay, last but not least, well, yeah, least. Let's talk about the Lions. Um,
Woo.
what's the vibes so far? Adam, obviously being the Ireland fan, it's a very Ireland heavy Lions series. Have you been enjoying it?
Not really. I've enjoyed parts. Um, I've enjoyed
Oh,
I've enjoyed seeing like it's one of those like that first test dragged the New Zealand versus Australia invitational team that was, I think, you put it in the group chat going, Jesus, is this game still on? It felt like it went on for about.
I was only half watching it. I was doing something else, and I kept popping my head back in, and I was like, "How is this still going on?" I was like checking my watch, like, "How is this game still carrying on?" It
it,
started
it
3 hours ago.
Like so I went out with my mate watching it yesterday, and I had that horrific hot dog that I sent into the group chat. I was basically explaining that there was this full breakfast that I was gonna have. It was gonna be a full English. I was gonna have all the trimmings, and then they came out and it was all full English on a hot dog, and it was grim. It was dreadful. But I was watching that
But
joke.
you still ate it, right? You still ate
I,
it.
I had half of it, and I just sort of like picked at the rest. It was one of those. I was really hungry. Anyway, but I was in a pub, and it was in Liverpool, and sort of the feeling around the second half was, God, Andy Farrell plays boring rugby, doesn't he? He does, and I think that's what everyone's starting to realize. Like my mate said to me, he was like, "Oh, I can actually kind of see why you were sort of down in the Six Nations because it is very routinely boring rugby." I think at one point, I think it get to the 70th minute of the first test, and it said that Australia had 76% of possession in that within the first 70, like within that 70 minutes block. And I was like, "Oh, Andy Farrell does not like playing with the ball. He loves defense. He loves squeezing the fence and he loves cutting through on a try that's basically a walkthrough." Um, it's really interesting, and I think the whole sort of I just found it like it's going to be interesting. Like I really want Australia to win at least the second test. I don't want this to be a blowout test. I think Australia showed what they could do at the end of that test by scoring a lot of tries. But am I going to wake up for the First Nations and Pacifica Wednesday morning game? Yes. Are we going to see 70-0? Yes. Are we going to see some Jamie Osborne hat trick that will lead him into the starting 15? Probably. But that's the way it's going at the minute. The sort of Lions only work when the four nations can't beat a team like Australia, New Zealand, or South Africa. I think it only works when we play when the four nations.
Like 2017, when it would have been impossible for any of the four to go to New Zealand and win.
Yeah, and we drew, and that was incredible. But you always think like I'd even argue like the 2013 Australia team would walk all over this Australian team at the minute. It's sort of like the Wales of the Southern Hemisphere in that sense. Um, like they've had some teams getting lost in the shuffle, and the Rebels, those were sort of lost within the year. I just found that this sort of like the first test, the second half, I was looking through it. It wasn't the most entertaining sport I watched this weekend because Kaelin wanted me to say about the All Ireland today in the hurling. And that was incredible. That was a spectacle. Fast, high scoring, just good crack all around. Whereas yesterday I had two English people next to me I overheard going, "Why is that James Lowe starting? What do you call that South African boy that plays for Scotland? Ah, Van der Merwe. He should be starting. He scored a hat-trick against the invitational team of Oz v New Zealand." And I'm like, that's the snapshot of the Lions at the minute. It's very I didn't necessarily think it was a great advertisement for rugby on Saturday. It was just very boring.
Something that you said, because obviously being the Wales fan, most Wales fans have completely disconnected from this tour, obviously because of the lack of representation. And so people, you can have your opinions on whether it should be purely merit or whether there's an ethos to the Lions that should be honoured by having representation. And it's funny, on social media, the way that people are just laying into this tour at the moment of like the British and Irish fans are saying like this is crap just on social media and just saying it. But something that you said in our group chat, which they kind of like hit home for me, and correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but it was like this is how Ulster fans feel about Ireland all the time.
Well, yeah, it is. It is. It's like when you watch this Lions team, right? And you think about if you're a Welsh fan watching this Lions team, and I'm firmly in belief that Jack Morgan and Williams would have made the bench. Williams would have made the bench after this Premiership season. Williams would have made the bench at least for that test team. Jack Morgan should have been on it. Should have been in that test squad. Um, but yeah, it is. It's like watching. It's like it is like being an Ulster fan watching Ireland play because you have some of these players that you think Tag Furlong's only played goodness knows how many URC minutes. He hardly played in the Six Nations, but he was there whipping out balls from fly half at in tight head, and you're like, yeah, you can say on paper that I didn't necessarily want him to play, but it was really good seeing him play with Finn Smith, not Finn Smith, Finn Russell. But it's one of those like it like you sort of I'm into it, but there comes a point where I've had more Ulster alumni players play against the Lions than Ulster players play for the Lions. I think this is the first tour that I've seen. Like I can say that because like I sympathize with the Welsh fans because I've at least had like a Tommy Bowe in that squad, and Ian Henderson, but we don't have any because it shows
Rory Best.
Rory Best as well. We had him as well. Jared Payne in 2017. Stephen Ferris in 2009. We always had players, and they weren't necessarily being test players. I think Tommy Bowe was the only test player that we've had in the last couple of years, and that's okay. But it sort of shows the issue with Andy Farrell's selection process where he the beauty of the Lions is seeing combos that you wouldn't necessarily see like in a club rugby or an international sense. It's a proper like sort of like this is what we're going to try out. This is what we're going to try out. But Andy Farrell, he's a fiend for cohesion. He absolutely loves cohesion. So that's why Bundy didn't start at 12 on Saturday. It had to be the Scottish boys. And on the second test, the Scottish boys are going to get dropped, and it's going to be Aki and Ringrose, and that's how it's going to go. He just loves putting players in positions where it's like used to work well in a national team. We're going to put you in there, and then not use the wings at all because I think the wings. I don't know about you, Hugh, but I think the wings were just criminally underused. I think Tommy Freeman is the definition of an Andy Farrell winger that Andy Farrell doesn't have the option for. But when you see the type of what is it when you have a Lions tour that's sponsored, by the way, by an airline company, saying that they're going to probably be more in the red. I've read this somewhere. They're going to be more in the red. There's so many call-ups. There's so many call-ups in this squad. It would make sense if a Blair Murray was in that squad because Japan is up there rather than calling out somebody from Portugal over.
It's too late now. He's back in thingy.
Back in Wales, is it?
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Personally, I look forward to seeing Tom Jordan start
Cannon.
on the bench in the last test due to injuries.
Yeah, do you know what? It's not even going to be Tom Jordan. It's going to be Sam Prendergast. We're going to see.
Ah.
It's going to be that. We're going to see somebody come through. Like I said on the other podcast, that do you know the reason why like Clarkson, Osborne, and like the three Scottish fellas were all announced at different times? It's because they didn't want another Geography 6 comment made. They didn't want to be like it was one of those where you're like, oh, Clarkson, he's got about 4 or 5 caps for Ireland. He's gonna kick on really well, and I'm sure this tour is gonna teach him a lot. Jamie Osborne, you would have argued he could have been in that squad anyway. Whereas Darcy Graham should have been in that squad. He should have been in that squad from the start instead of like Van der Merwe. And then you have the likes of like Roy Sutherland. I think it's just Andy Farrell knows him. He's an Ulster player as well. He's a former Ulster player, so I'm surprised he got in. But yeah, it's sort of like that detachment from fans. It doesn't like seem like we know a lot about how the camp is going, or we see an odd video here and there. But the beauty of the Lions was certainly back in like 2017 and 2013. Was that we saw competitive games week in, week out because they were trying different things. I think Andy Farrell is just about win, 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 checkbox. The mate that I went to the pub with, he was like, that's probably the most checkbox rugby match I've ever seen. We scored all of our points in the first half, and the second half we just kicked it and defended, and we didn't see much excitement in either way.
Is this peak Lions? No, but if I look at sort of the traffic on YouTube and other platforms and stuff like that, it's still garnering a certain degree of attention. Even our more Lions-focused podcasts on the former Rap YouTube page, those also got a bit more traction. It's just an off Lions here. What's interesting to me though is that the players themselves who get picked for the Lions, for the British and Irish Lions games. They seem very enthusiastic about it. One, you get a test cap, and two, we've all seen the numbers of what you actually get paid for that. And if you have a short, I've said this multiple times, if you have a short rugby career, you want to maximize your income. So why I don't begrudge the players for wanting to get test caps and maximizing their income. So they're up for it and they want to win. But obviously the issue is that because Australia are maybe not as bad as Wales, but they're not great. The jeopardy of the Lions team is, we suspect the Lions team is going to win all the games, that type of thing. Maybe they'll lose one, that type of thing, which is weird because Australia is a team that should have cohesion. The whole idea is that you're going up against a good team, one of the three Southern Hemisphere teams. I'm okay with them putting Argentina in at some point. that in the rotation, so it makes a four team rotation. A national team with cohesion. Can a national team with cohesion playing at home beat sort of a combination of these really good Northern Hemisphere teams? And that's sort of the jeopardy of the whole thing. And the idea and my understanding of the Northern Hemisphere people that I've spoken to, the I the sort of fun aspect of going on tour in the Southern Hemisphere. That's also an aspect.
Yeah, I think as well, like we're in a pretty big like there is more jeopardy to this than usual because rugby union in Australia is a dying sport in terms of crowd sizes, isn't it? Like they
Mm,
get more rugby league is at an all-time high in terms of popularity in Australia, and you have the
mm.
likes of Aussie rules football and stuff like that as well. But you have a home World Cup within 2 years. If the Lions go over and thrash this Australia team for the next two games, what's that going to do for Australian rugby in general? You don't want you don't want that to happen. Do you know what I mean? Like for the beauty of the game, you don't want that to happen because it would just take away like the Lions are playing in the MSG, the MCG even. They're playing at the cricket ground in Australia, like what, nearly enough 90,000 people. You want that place to be rocking, you want that place to be violent and like sort of enthusiastic for the game. Whereas on Saturday, I don't think it was necessarily a great atmosphere. It was a great atmosphere from Lions fans because of how many people went over. But like cut back to like 2013, the Australian fans were hungry for a Lions tour. They're not necessarily hungry for a Lions tour now. I think it's just the novelty of the Lions tour. That's what it is. It's sort of like a novelty thing at the minute. Whereas when it was so unlucky that the South Africa tests were in COVID, because you can imagine that was going to be a test to sort of kick back that idea of the Lions. Whereas this is the one kicking back from the whole pandemic and you're getting crowds back and stuff like that as well. It's a bit of like a damp
I
squid.
forgot about that World Cup aspect though, because like if you're Duan van der Merwe or any other player who's relatively young who thinks that, look, I'm a good player. If I stay fit, I'll probably, and my form doesn't fall off a cliff, I'll probably be selected for Scotland, England, etc. For the World Cup. So let me go experience the Australia. Let's do a tour in Australia. Let's experience sort of the travel, the sort of weather, the atmosphere,
I honestly don't think that comes
etc.
into it at all. I think
Say again?
it's the Lions. The Lions is the top, like because you have
Ah,
to be the best of the best to get selected for it. It's a reward. Well, but theoretically, you have to be the best to be the best of the best to be selected for it. Um, it's like a recognition of your career and your stature to be picked for
ah,
it. So I don't think it's. I think I can't. I'm not aware of any player ever saying no, and I don't think any player ever would.
No,
yeah.
I don't think there was one that Jade pulled out for personal reasons, but that was just for personal reasons. But I think that was in like 2017 potentially.
Was that
I
Tom
think you
Youngs?
misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm just saying they would want to go on tour because this is the same venue as
I,
the
I
next.
I honestly don't think that that comes into the thinking.
Oh, they don't even think of it.
No.
It's more of like I think it is. It's just the novelty of playing for the Lions because it's going to be a completely different setup. Like the Lions is also a big social aspect for the lads as well. Like they have like kangaroo courts just like university where they
Hmm.
roll dice and they'd have to do like a silly thing like Simon Zebo having that clip that's like the most probably overplayed Lions clip of all time.
Yeah.
But him having to ring Rob Penny, who was the Munster coach at the time, saying,
Hmm.
"Listen, I want to be captain of the Munster rugby team." Or I think this week they were like, "Oh, Will Stewart, you're gonna have to get a piercing," and he's like, "Oh, grand, it's like
You're describing a lad's holiday.
That's what it is.
that's what the Lions is. Yeah, it's a glorified lads' holiday.
I've actually seen that YouTube clip, the whole Simon Zebo one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a lads' holiday that sort of they have to remember that they're playing rugby in it.
Imagine getting paid to go on a lad's holiday. Wow.
Well,
Handsomely at that.
there's always that story that like I think it was James Haskell said about Rory Best and him putting him in a bed and zooming him out and him going down this hill and like they just noticed that they accidentally nearly killed Rory Best on tour. But like it's one of those like as laddie banter that it is because it was James Haskell speaking about it. But yeah, it is about like it's about that sort of like the tour shenanigans and the traditional side of it is that it is a tour. It is a Lions tour. Like it's not any type of. It's a homage to your career that you've had X amount of Lions tours. And that's what Owen Farrell getting picked was about. He's what, the 4th player ever to hit 4 tours. He's not necessarily get a test cap, but he's just there, you know, he's there for the crack. And it seems like they are having crack. They are having good crack, but you know, at the end of the day, you know, those tests, like the Australians would take it sure as the South Africans and the New Zealanders every 12 years. For an Aussie player, you only have probably one chance at playing the Lions as well. You know, you only have one chance at playing
Unless you play for the Lions.
unless you play for the Lions. Well, that's the thing. Like I watched that video and was like, oh, Elliot Daly played in the 2013 Barbarians team. Didn't remember that necessarily. But yeah, unless you play for the Lions, which is, you know, it's just one of those, like, you will have that sort of argument about the beauty of the Lions, and it's probably going to get argued now more after this tour if it's a 3-0, but I would rather it be a 2-1, the second tour be an Australia win, just primarily to make the third tour anyway watchable.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's the beauty of this podcast specifically, because from a South African Southern Hemisphere perspective, I personally didn't realize the significance of getting a Lions caps, sort of like a feather in your career, that type of thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. Okay, we need to bring it to an end there. So if you have gotten to the end, all the way to the end of this podcast, firstly, comment end in the comments, because interaction is good. Thank you in advance. You've clearly enjoyed what you've seen, so you haven't subscribed to the Global Game Line already. Please do keep your eyes peeled for the next episode of the Interpro Show, or the debut episode of the South African Rugby podcast that is yet to come. And of course, the American Wall Street Journal show that will be out reviewing England's win over the USA and a USA Women's Eagles win over Fiji yesterday. So stay tuned for all that. That just remains to say thank you to Adam and Mohammed for joining me this evening.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Enjoy your rugby, and I hope everybody's team wins. Bye.
That was the United Rugby Rewind. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.